Thanks for joining me on Tropical Weather Impact. Meteorologist Payton Malone in New Orleans. It is Thursday, August the 7th here. The tropics still maintaining what's going on out there. So far, we haven't seen any huge changes in our forecast. We're still watching 3 areas. The only change is we are now referring to our disturbance out in the Atlantic as Invest 96. So that's being investigated by the National Hurricane Center. Believe it or not, you still have Dexter becoming a powerful non-tropical system eventually. That's still moving out to the east, and this feature off the east coast, the chances of development have actually dropped some. I do think we are going to see some gradual development here with that, but it looks like it's probably going to stay off the east coast too, and so more so indirect impacts to some areas there along the east coast later on this week. Something else we've been monitoring as well, and the Hurricane Center not highlighting it because we don't see development with it, but it is something to monitor with some extra moisture. It's this tropical moisture that's in near Cuba and off the coast here of Florida. This moisture is traveling towards the Gulf. You will probably see this if you look at models and you look at the precipitable water, or in other words, how much moisture is in the atmosphere. You can see that little fetch of moisture here. That's going to be traveling into the Gulf Friday and Saturday. Now, again, we don't have a lot of model support for this to do anything or organize, but it will bring some extra tropical moisture along the northern Gulf early next week. And what this means is any shower or thunderstorm that tries to form early next week can tap into that moisture, and the rainfall rates would be higher or more efficient. That's the extent of that. Just doesn't look like it's going to be able to really do much more than that right there. And so that's good. That's got us stress-free at the moment. Now, the feature off the east coast, there is some broad low-level spin here. The National Hurricane Center saying this does still have a chance to try to organize as it moves northeast, but it may not be fully tropical in nature, kind of like Dexter went from non-tropical to tropical, back to non-tropical. These things get tied into old fronts and things like that. And so this is just going to be one of those areas of low pressure. You can see not a whole lot going on with it this morning, with those showers and storms being rather, we'll call it anemic here, where it just doesn't have a whole lot going on with it. But there is a little bit of broad spin in here. If you look at it on satellite, if you look at it on satellite, not necessarily on radar, you can see that there is some showers and storms here, not very organized, a little spin in there, but Hurricane Center only giving it that 30% chance of development. Our precision cast high resolution models show that it continues to struggle here. You do have a lot of rain out in the waters. You've got some rain in the coastal areas, but general thinking is this thing is not going to do anything quickly over the next couple of days as it lifts out to sea. And then eventually it could actually try to form north of the Bahamas, north of Bermuda by the end of this week or early next week. Now, this is Invest 96. This is the one that's been getting a lot more attention, but our confidence continues to grow that at least for the next week or so, it's not really going to be an issue for anybody. This feature is down here this morning, 96. It's going to be traveling in this general area, and you remember, this is not a cone of uncertainty. This shows where low pressure could come together. You could have a storm trying to form further down here. You could have a storm trying to form way up here. And so there is some uncertainty on exactly what it does if it ever does try to organize. They're still only giving it a medium chance of organization. Seems to be struggling this morning, though. This area of showers and storms, not a whole lot with it. Again, this is looking anemic too. I think it's got some dry air problems right now. But as it pushes to the northwest, we'll probably see it try to organize some, and a lot of models do have this organizing, at least marginally, as we go into the weekend and early next week. Now, we are running tropical models on this. It is an Invest after all. And whenever you see the tropical models, you can see they all agree it's going to have more of a west-northwest track as we go through this week and early next week. Now, once we get into Wednesday, Thursday, this is where things start to deviate. Now, they do all show some type of turn happening. Some models don't even have it existing by this point. They have it getting wrapped up in dry air and wind shear and just getting shredded apart. And that is on the table here. But if we do have a formidable storm, a named storm, the thinking is it's probably going to start to turn as this ridge of high pressure has a weakness in it out here. Now, with that being said, there's nothing organized yet. We still are in those formative stages on if it ever does form, and so we still need to just sit back and kind of watch it at this point before you completely write it off along the East Coast or for Bermuda. Now, the Gulf, I don't see this being a Gulf storm. the way it's setting up right now. It has too much of a northerly movement to it. Again, it's going to be dealing with some dry air in the near term, but watch the moisture here. Look at all this dry air ahead of it. Moisture here, that's where your invest is. As we get it towards, let's say we get into Saturday, you see how this moisture is just getting kind of stretched apart and tugged. There's an upper level low spinning right here, which is trying to impart some wind shear on this thing. So the low level feature's moving this way. Your showers and storms are probably getting blown off if there's circulation. And so that's why models are, they're kind of marginal with it trying to form. Now let's put it in motion. We go into the end of the weekend. You see the moisture get split, and this is the GFS model showing, well, this little feature hangs on, creates a core, and maybe tries to spin up. And so that's why Bermuda's watching it. And this is where the big uncertainty exists. Does it go more out this way with the upper level low, or does it try to form out more this way and come up closer to Bermuda? Those are both on the table right now. So the motion's all thanks to the steering currents, right? There's a big weakness in the ridge right now. There's an upper level low spinning here. It's traveling in that weakness. That's why it's heading northwest. We put this in motion. You can see that that ridge does start to get a bit stronger. That's in the mid levels. Upper levels, you still have that upper level low spinning. Maybe that's some wind shear for it. But as we get towards the early part of next week, we need this ridge to weaken so it can go completely out to sea here, or there near Bermuda. This ridge looks like we may have a weakness in it, enough of a weakness. There you see next Wednesday, Thursday, if we can get this little trough down here to dig down. And so we need that to happen so this thing does have a route to go out to sea. The scenarios where it gets trapped under the ridge are the things that could be a bit more problematic for the U.S., but there's not as many models showing that scenario anymore. So that's what's happening with Invest 96 here. Now the GFS and Euro, they don't really agree on how this progresses when you look at the non-spaghetti models. They show something down there this morning, but the European thinks dry air is really going to do a number on this thing. And then this is where you see them really depart. The European model still says that upper level low is going to pull it out quickly. And the GFS says, well, maybe not. Maybe we still have an area that survives and lingers a bit closer to Bermuda by the middle and end of next week. And so that's why there's still quite a bit of uncertainty in the final evolution of this one. Now, what goes on behind Invest 96? Well, you see these areas down here. These are new tropical waves, disturbed weather moving it across the Atlantic next week. Models, and really if you look at any of the models, they do show some of this. They just don't agree on what happens, and we expect that because this is 1 week away, and it would be 2 to 2.5 weeks away from ever being an issue for anybody close to the U.S. And so while there are some essentially scary looking model runs showing hurricanes all coming at the U.S. in a 1.5 to 2 weeks, we aren't quite locked in on that. We don't know a lot of things right now. Now, we do think the atmosphere may be a bit more conducive. The European model is aggressive with showing a system trying to form here next week, another one here, maybe the Caribbean we have to keep an eye on, but you can't put a whole lot of stock in this right now. There's other influences, like what does Invest 96 end up doing? If that ends up becoming an actual hurricane, it's going to be an influence on everything happening down here too. It's going to be an influence on the heat ridge and the blocking ridge and all these things. And so remember, it's all a moving thing. It's all a moving with each other. And so just got to sit back and wait at this point. But we do see signs that, yeah, the wave train gets going here over the Atlantic as we head through the middle and the end of August, and that's exactly what we expect as we go throughout this time of year. So at this point, you're just in that wait and watch game. It is not shocking that we're talking about this. You know, this is that type of setup where if the tropics really do interest you, these are fascinating to watch. It's fascinating to watch the models, but if you're somebody who just needs to check the tropics, you know, once, twice a week, then there's not going to be a whole lot of changes here over the next 7 days, at least here locally in the U.S. Now, out towards the Caribbean islands, of course, you want to keep a closer eye on things, especially next week with the potential for these areas trying to organize. But outside of that, there's really no details to be told at this point. It's just too far out in time, and there's too many moving parts for us to have any certainty on what exactly is going to happen here. So we're to that part of hurricane season where we sit back and we have to do that painstaking waiting game where you're sitting there watching these tropical waves travel for over a week to 2 weeks before you have a lot of confidence or you know exactly what they're going to do. So we're sitting here. We know we got the majority of hurricane season left ahead of us. We should take it day by day, week by week here. But the good news is I can guarantee at least the next 7 days there's no major tropical threats to the United States. Bermuda, the island nation, going to keep a closer eye on things with Invest 96 trying to creep up their way by the middle of next week. September's your busiest month. October, we've had some fairly big storms in October. We've had Category 5s in the Gulf in October, so that month often gets overlooked here, but even through the middle of October, it can remain extremely active. The back end of October, typically that threat is shifting toward the East Coast and Florida. Texas to Louisiana by the end of October, we're usually doing okay, and then November's the month where we're getting ready for decent cold fronts. And so we'll get there eventually, but we got to get through all this mess. Of course, we'll continue to have these updates for you daily right here on Tropical Weather Impact, whether you're catching us on WWL Plus, YouTube, or our website. We will keep these regular for you. I'll see you right back here tomorrow for your Friday update. Have a great day.